will be talking about your role as a teacher in flexible learning, especially in supporting your learners in online learning. So in online learning and remote learning, learner support is a very, very important issue, but it is often a neglected topic. So in my previous talks, if you have attended some webinars, I have talked about institutional support. So when we talk of learner support, there are basically three levels. So I can classify them into three levels. So the first level is the institutional support. So these are the support services given by your university. So there are different types of institutional support, and you can look for a detailed talk about this in our networks. And then we also have the program or the college level support, wherein you provide your own program advising to your students. And today I'll be talking about the third level support, which is the course level, which is provided by the teachers. You provide support services to your students. So that's what we will be talking about today. Okay. Before we proceed, let us do a recap of what you have learned in your past session, specifically on your role as an online facilitator. Okay, so may I ask everyone to just go quickly to this link. You can also do a quick point at the QR code, and Lex will be sharing the link at the chat box, so it will be easier for you to go to the link. So I'm seeing answers which are all correct actually. So you talk about encouraging student participation, you walk side by side with your students, you plan lessons and activities, you monitor student progress, teach and inspire, etc. But thank you very much for those who have correctly answered the 4 roles shared in your previous sessions, which are the pedagogical, managerial, technical, and social roles. Okay, so for this morning, we will be dwelling more, expanding more on those concepts. Okay, so let me share again my screen. So we talk about, in your previous session, you talk about the 4 roles. So these are the pedagogical, wherein you need to prepare your learning activities, provide scaffolding to your students, select and curate your learning resources, and strategize your assessment. Then you also have your managerial role, wherein you should be able to do organizational and administrative activities within your classes. And then you also have your technical role, wherein you provide technical scaffolding as well. And then you provide social role, ensuring that your students are motivated, engaged, and are able to participate in your classes. So basically, those 4 roles sum up what you have put in the live poll for this morning. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for participating in that brief poll. So according to research, the best predictors of student success is their level of engagement in their online or remote courses. Now, when it is clear to the students what the purpose of learning is, and that they can contribute, can connect with other students, and can feel a sense of ownership in the learning process, then they actually do better in their courses compared to when they are passive and expected to simply absorb the information taught to them by their teachers. So just as we know that teaching is an active task, we also have to remember that learning is also an active task. But the question now is, how do we engage students in the experience of online learning? And how can we create a sense of engaged, active, and authentic learning? Now, this is where the role of teachers come in, especially in supporting the learners in their learning process. Okay. So for this morning, for this session, you should be able to explain the community of inquiry framework as it relates to learner support and discuss the 4 pillars of supporting student success. So we will be talking about these different frameworks as it relates to your role as a teacher in providing learner support to your student and ensuring the success of their learning and so that they'll be able to complete the courses that they are currently taking. Okay, so I'll give you a few seconds to absorb what we'll be talking about this morning. So this will just be a brief talk. There will be, again, an asynchronous session in the model, and you will be, again, asked to do an activity or probably an assignment. Okay. Right. Okay, so moving on. If you will look at the literature when it comes to online learning and remote learning, there is a consensus in literature that effective online and remote teaching or instruction requires a more flexible approach due to the variety of roles and skills applied in online contexts. Hence, it is important to remember that there is a key difference between online and face-to-face learning environment which necessitate a different set of online teaching competencies. Okay, so as teachers in an on-campus or face-to-face setting, you know your competencies. But in an online setting, there is a different set of online teaching competencies that you need to acquire and that you need to be able to, apply to your students when applied to the teaching and learning process. Now, let's go through each competencies one by one. So these competencies, number one, this is according to research done in various online and remote classes. So, of course, the number one competency is communication skill. As a teacher, it is important to be able to effectively communicate and interact with the learners by clearly establishing his or her presence through his or her interaction with the students, as well as the interaction of the students with the content that has been prepared and curated by the teacher. So when we talk of communication skills here, we're not just talking of the synchronous type of communication wherein you interact with your student, but this also includes the various types of interaction that you as a teacher or as an instructional designer integrated in the design of your learning or course materials. Okay. Now, in the absence of the richness of interactions available to, which are available to face-to-face students, online teachers become a very important ingredient in helping to engage, retain, and allow online students to complete their courses. That's why it's very important that you have and you know how to properly communicate and interact with your online or remote students. Okay. Now, the next skill is technological competence. So we have talked about this. You have talked about this in your previous sessions. That's why it's a very important role as an online facilitator. It is important for the teacher to provide technical scaffolding for the course. And again, there are many research that says the lack of required technical competence, both on the part of the students and the teacher, can actually contribute to student discontinuation or disengagement from the course. So, as a teacher, we should always strive to do better or learn more about various technical skills so that we'll be able to be more competent when it comes to technology. So I'm not just talking here about the use of gadgets, but I'm talking more on how is that gadget appropriate to be used for a particular learning set of learning outcomes. There's another resource in the networks wherein they talk about a framework which is called the TPCK. It's a framework that shares to the teachers how you'll be able to integrate technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge when teaching, doing the online teaching, learning to your students. Okay, now let's talk about the third skill, which is actually still related to the first competency, which is communication skill. And now the third skill is the provision of informative feedback. So this is again according to research. Teachers play a crucial role in motivating students throughout their online study. And since teachers are the only personalized point of contact provided to students at any one time during the duration of the course, therefore, it is important that he or she provides immediate feedback or timely feedback to the students, which serves as a formative assessment to help the students improve his or her performance in the course. But I do understand how difficult this is. I myself, I'm guilty of not being able to provide timely feedback to my students. What you can actually do is really design your courses wherein you're already able to embed or integrate various feedbacks throughout the course. So it's not just that they will rely on your feedback, but you can actually integrate or embed various feedback mechanisms in your courses. And as you are able to deliver courses throughout the semester, and then you'll be able to offer it again in the next semester, then more or less you'll be able to curate the questions asked by your students, and you can more or less prepare an answer, a synthesis of those of answer to those questions to your students, which you can actually prepare ahead of time, so that for your next offering, you will just be adding some of the nuances in their new questions. Okay, now we also have the fourth competency, which is administrative skills. So this has also been discussed in your previous sessions. As an online teacher, you must be able to handle organizational, procedural, and administrative tasks related to the course. Okay, so this is again related to the roles of an online facilitator, which have been discussed in your previous session. And then the fifth competency is responsiveness. Again, this is related to communication skills and providing feedback. Previous studies have showed that teacher responsiveness and availability has been highlighted as key predictor of online student satisfaction. And there have been a number of research done about this. And that the lack of timely feedback or slow communication timeframes from teachers contribute to the dissatisfaction of students in their online learning experience. So if there is one thing that we should really work on is the timely feedback to our students and our responsiveness to their questions and queries and to their various needs in our courses. And then, of course, the fifth competency is monitoring learning. Since the teacher, you do not see your students face to face, and you will not be able to meet them anymore, just like in the previous practice you do, wherein you see them every day, and you're able to gauge their performance based on your interaction with them. In an online learning, this would be very difficult to do. That's why you should be able to monitor their learning. You can do this in various analytics in your LMS, or you can probably do your traditional recording in an Excel or in a Google Sheet, and ensure that you're able to monitor their performance and provide intervention when necessary. Okay, so if you think that a set of student or one student, a couple of students are not able to grasp specific lessons or topics or concepts, then you should do an intervention. Okay, and of course, the last competency is providing student support. Technically, all these competencies are part of a teacher's role to provide services to his or her learners. Because when we talk of student support, this actually refers to services provided by the teacher before the course starts, during the course, and even after the course, which includes providing grades in a timely manner. So if you will look back to your previous session, you had a discussion about the various roles of a teachers, wherein there were 4 phases, and those phases are critical when you are doing your role as a teacher. Okay, so this is actually part of providing student support to them. Okay. Okay, so far, those are the competencies of an online or remote teacher. So you probably make this you can use this as a checklist when you're trying to self-evaluate your competency as an online or remote teacher. Okay, now let us talk about framework. This is part of an institution and teacher responsibility, because as an institution, as a school and a teacher, it is your responsibility to create an inclusive, supportive structure where students can engage in social interactions, and a sense of online community can actually be fostered. Now, this framework was developed in 2000 by Randy Garrison, Terry Anderson, and Walter Archer, and they call this the Community of Inquiry Framework. This has actually been extended as a framework in 2003. Now, but the basic idea here is that the idea is that learning online should be a memorable learning experience in which there is a real presence of a teacher, a real sense of challenge and cognitive presence, and a real sense of belonging to a community of students engaged in active learning. And all of this focused on a specific body of knowledge, skills, and capabilities set in a context that is purposeful and meaningful. Now, as you can see, the framework focuses on the idea of presence. So how we create a sense that the teacher and students are present and are interacting not just with each other, but also with the content that they are asked to understand, engage with, and master. Now, the community of inquiry theoretical framework represents a process of creating a deep and meaningful learning experience through the developments of these 3 interdependent elements. So as you can see, there's the social, cognitive, and teaching presence. So these are actually interdependent elements. So when we talk of social presence, it is the ability of participants to identify with the community or the course of study, communicate purposefully in a trusting environment, and develop interpersonal relationships by way of projecting their individual personalities. Okay. Now, when we talk of teaching presence, this is the design, facilitation, and direction of cognitive and social processes for the purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educational worthwhile learning outcomes. And when we talk of cognitive presence, this is the extent to which the learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse. So this community of inquiry framework surfaces the idea of presence and ensuring, fostering the feeling of being engaged in a community, in an active learning community. Okay, so this framework will be discussed more in your asynchronous session. Okay, now So we talk about the presence, the community of inquiry, which fosters the sense of belongingness to a community. Now let's talk about uh, how how that sense of belongingness will be able to address the different barriers to effective student engagement. Because according to research, through the feeling of ownership and belongingness to a certain community, you are actually able to address the different barriers to effective student engagement. Okay, so the community of inquiry that was discussed earlier, and the sense of community that a student, wherein a student would feel that he or she would belong to an online or a group of engaged community of learners, it will actually act as a buffer against attrition and against students who would feel dissatisfied in a particular course. Okay, now let us take a look at these different barriers to effective student engagement. As a teacher, it is critical that you understand and promote the factors that can actually enhance belonging in an online community. Okay, so there are a number of factors and situations that can act as barriers to effective student engagement in online learning. And it is a known fact, based on research, that online learning face higher attrition rates than on-campus or face-to-face mode of learning. So if you will look at the literature, one of the biggest challenge or hurdles in online learning is the attrition rate. A lot of students, and a number of students actually drop out from their courses. And let us take a look at some of the reasons why they do this. Okay, so here are some of the barriers. So this is actually according to a number of researches that has been done over the years about the reason for students who drop out from their course, students who are not able to finish, or students who are dissatisfied from their courses. Okay, so number one, of course, is technical difficulties. So we all know that students, even teachers, are used to face-to-face interaction. So the idea of a technology-mediated learning pose some difficulty on the part of the students and the teacher. So they would experience some technical difficulties. Probably they're not able to connect to the internet. Probably they do not have gadgets. They're not able to participate if there are synchronous sessions or interaction with a teacher, and other technical difficulties that they would encounter. Now, technical difficulty is actually a very crucial barrier or factor, especially in countries like the Philippines. So, admittedly, the Philippines is not ready for an online learning, and we are actually able to experience it nowadays. So even myself, I am here in, almost Greater Metro Manila, very near Metro Manila. I have strong internet connection. I have a fiber connection, but my call is always dropped, especially in the past days wherein they are having some maintenance. So if I am having this kind of difficulty, then I can imagine the difficulty that other teachers and other students actually face in areas where there is very, very slow internet connection. So I think this is one area that probably our government should really improve on. And I know that they are actually doing something about it. But this is a reality for everyone. This is a barrier that would probably would really contribute to students dropping out from the program or from the course. Okay, second is the perceived isolation. Okay, so this is In an online learning environment, we have what we call the transactional distance. And when we talk of transactional distance, this is not just the distance, the physical distance or the physical separation between the teacher and the learner and among the learners, but also the psychological distance that students feel. And this actually contribute to the perceived isolation. So we all know that our students are social beings. They thrive with going out with their friends and their peers, and then suddenly they're in a learning environment wherein they have to work on their own, do things on their own, not being able to socialize and communicate with friends and peers. And this kind of setup will actually lead to that perceived isolation. They would feel that they are all alone, and they have no one to turn to when they are having difficulties in their learning process, or even if they're having difficulty in just a kind of modality. Okay, so that's second. So first, we have technical difficulty. Second is perceived isolation. And then, of course, third is challenges in balancing study. This is a reality again for many of our courses now. We have basically just shifted it from face-to-face setting to an online or remote environment. So we did not actually deloaded our students. So they're still carrying on same load, same units. So probably some are carrying 18 units or 21 units. And can you imagine balancing their time between their different subjects and probably other responsibilities at home? Because, this is a different setup now. They are not in school, so they're at home, and their parents are able to see them. They'll probably be required to do some chores at home. They'll probably be able to are required to contribute to some responsibilities when it comes to their family obligations. So there's that barrier. That's a barrier to an effective student engagement. So the challenge of balancing their study. And not to mention that they're always in front of the computer. So there's that, challenge of not going through the games or watching videos or, watching Netflix. So students should be able to have that discipline in order to be able to balance their study. Okay, so they should be able to resist the temptation of playing games or watching movies instead of doing their studies. And related, of course, to this third barrier is the work and family commitment. As I've mentioned, this is now an entirely different setup. So the students are at home. They are facing their computers, and their parents and other family members are, roaming around the house, doing their chores and doing their other obligations within the family. And definitely, there will be times when they would ask their child to help out. And of course, this would, disrupt their study time or their focus on the lessons that they're probably studying on that particular time. Okay. And then another barrier, of course, is confusion with content. Because of the nature of online learning, wherein majority of the time you're not able to meet synchronously, so you will not be able to address some confusion by the student when it comes to the content. So you'll not be able to answer questions, you'll not be able to expand on topics wherein they have difficulty understanding. And of course, poor academic performance, which is also related to confusion with content. So maybe some of them are not able to, cope with the lessons, and as a teacher, you're not able to immediately provide support to them. And of course, the last is the lack of motivation, because really the nature of online learning is that it is designed for a self-directed, independent type of learning. And we all know that if you are not motivated and if you don't have the skill set to be a self-directed learning, you will not be motivated to learn on your own. Which is why it becomes a barrier to effective student engagement. Okay, so these are the different barriers to effective student engagement. And as a teacher, you should be aware of these different barriers so that you will know how you will be able to provide learner support to your students. Okay, now let us move on to the four pillars to supporting student success. Okay, so with the barriers that we have discussed earlier, it is important to consider how can you, as a teacher, provide support to your students and ensure their success in terms of learning as well as in terms of completing their courses. Now, let us take a look at this diagram, which shows the four pillars of supporting student success. These pillars are often the intangibles that teachers often take for granted when providing fully online or remote courses. So these pillars include online-friendly academic support, assistance with navigating technology, health and well-being facilities, and a sense of belongingness or community, which is actually related to the community of inquiry framework. Okay, now let us take a look at each component. Now, the first pillar, and probably the most crucial support an institution and a teacher can offer to online or remote students, revolves around online-friendly academic resources and adequate opportunities for student-instructor interaction, as well as student-student interaction and student content interaction. And this is actually part of academic support. Now, according to literature, if you are able to design well, if you are able to properly and strategically design your course materials, the demand for learner support actually decreases. So if you're able to design your course materials well, if you're able to provide learning scaffolding to your students through your learning activities, if you're able to select and curate good learning resources, and you're able to put all these components together in a well designed instructional material, then the demand for learner support actually decreases. And that is actually based on research. Now, it is important to provide scaffolding that supports students throughout their learning. And of course, as I've mentioned, this comes in the form of, comprehensive overview of the course structure, getting the commitments of your students on recommended time to study, setting the expectation of students, familiarizing them with the required instructional media and software, and guidance on the communication tools needed for student-teacher interaction, carefully selecting and curating learning resources, properly designing learning activities, as well as assessment strategies. Okay. Now, comprehensive course-specific learning resources, of course, are also best delivered when there is a strong collaboration between online teacher and the institution's library. So I'm saying this because part of a major institutional learner support is actually providing library support or providing access to various learning resources to your student. Now, it would be good if the teacher and the library have a strong collaboration so that if the teacher is able to find a good resource, then the library should be able to provide access to that particular resource to the students. And this is part of academic support. Okay, so that's the first pillar, and it is probably the most important support that a teacher should provide to the student. Okay, now the second pillar, yet one of the most immediate and unique hurdles for online students, is the need to provide adequate technical scaffolding in order to prepare students for learning in an online only or in a remote environment. Institutions and teachers need to ensure that all technology requirements are clearly communicated to students before the start of the course, and that ongoing technical support is provided to avoid the barriers in learning we have discussed earlier. This is very important because especially if you have designed most of your materials, uh, integrating it in the various functionalities of your LMS. So it's important that you ensure that students are able to access and participate through this technology support. Okay, now the third pillar is health and well-being support. Now, we all know that the stress brought by the pandemic, and we have heard about this in the news, that because of the pandemic, many have lost their jobs. Some family members have lost their lives. Some have been displaced. And there have been many, factors that, brought about distress caused by the pandemic, as well as the challenges brought by the transition in the mode of learning from face-to-face to online. Now, all these are putting pressure on the health and well-being of our students. Not just our students, but on our health and well-being as well. And there have been research conducted on this recently, and many mental health professionals are raising concerns about the mental health issues among the students. And as we know, our students are not prepared for an intensive, self-directed, independent courses, which are basically the nature of online learning. And as I mentioned, students are social beings. They are used to socializing with peers and friends. And this situation, this disruption, health pandemic disruption, has caused them sudden separation from their peers, and this can actually create anxiety and feeling of isolation. And as they adjust to this new mode, you as teachers may need to extend psychosocial support to your students. And aside from this, as a teacher, you must be ready to spot students who might need help. For example, there are some posts in the discussion forum, and you read them as a teacher, and you saw that this particular post is actually crying out for help. So that's one of the role of your as of the teacher. You should be able to spot students who would need help, and should also be able to spot interactions that are probably considered cyberbullying. Maybe some of the students are picking on some of their classmates, and this is a cause for concern on your part, and you should be able to spot all these nuances and call the attention of the students. And if there are posts which you think are quite crucial and critical, and that they would need referral to a counselor, then by all means do so. The important thing is be able to spot them immediately and do something about it. Okay, so we do not want to hear stories about students committing suicide because their teacher was not able to address their specific needs or issues or concerns. And then another strategy that is actually gaining popularity this is of course in other countries, but this is also gaining popularity in metropolis, is the idea of promoting mindfulness. So you've heard of mindfulness. This is a practice of bringing attention to the present non-judgmentally. And research has shown that mindfulness can benefit students experiencing higher rates of psychological distress. Now, The effectiveness of mindfulness have actually been documented in various research in primary and secondary schools and even higher education institutions abroad. I'm not sure of research done within our country, but those documentation have actually showed promising results in improving resilience against common student-related stressor. Okay, so what is important here that your institution and you as a teacher must support students and promote positive health and mental well-being. Okay, now let's go to our fourth and last, but not the least, pillar. And this comes with prioritizing a sense of belongingness and community. Fostering open dialogue between students and teachers, as well as their fellow classmates, is essential to online learning, which can often be taken for granted during the implementation of online courses. Because as a teacher, we have been, so engaged and so busy in developing our instructional materials or modules or study guides, and we have taken for granted that our students actually need dialogue with us and with their fellow classmates. And this is not something that we should not take for granted. Because as I mentioned in the past slides, past slides, the feeling or the sense of community is very important for students, especially in online learning, because it actually gives them a motivation to pursue and continue their studies. Okay. Online students require, personalized, feedback from their teachers, from their fellow classmates, and it is important for them to have an equivalent community-like interactions. So this can actually be via social networking platforms, probably such as Facebook and Twitter, but ensure that this is not publicly available. With probably a group within your course or probably across your courses. The idea is to foster and promote a sense of community among your students. Because as I mentioned, research has identified that adequate quality and quantity of interaction between a student and their instructor is actually associated with increased student course satisfaction. Therefore, it is necessary for institutions and teachers to prioritize offering effective means of communication within the online learning environment, not bound by physical or geographical segregation. Okay, so some of you are actually conducting synchronous sessions, some are not. For my course, for example, I don't do synchronous communication because our courses at UPOU are designed for asynchronous learning. But what I do is I ask my student to post a video introduction so that they'll be able to see them and they'll be able to see me as well and see their students. And this would create a sense of community, even if it's not done synchronously. And it will address the issue of isolation and that lack of sense of community. Okay. Now, given the shorter time frame required for students to meet course deadlines, because we know that this is just probably around 14 weeks now, so this is very intensive, it becomes critical that students feel continuously supported, and that this support is fostered by the infrastructure of their online learning environment. And further research has also suggested that there are benefits to including students' and instructors' input into the development and implementation of online courses. So probably throughout the course, you can get feedback from your students on how to improve your courses, how to improve the delivery of your courses, so that you can actually apply this in your succeeding courses, because we do not know if next semester you'll be able to do face-to-face session already, considering the growing number of incidents in our country. but we have to prepare for it. If we'll still be offering online courses next semester, then we can improve it by getting the feedback from our students, involving them in the course design and redesign, so that we'll be able to offer it better in the coming semesters. Okay, so that's the 4 pillars. Again, the 4 pillars are academic support, technology support, health and well-being, and sense of community. To conclude, comprehensive and coordinated student support services are critically important for the social, emotional, and character development of students and the development of learning climates that are conducive to student achievement of high academic standards. And student support services foster positive relationships among teachers and students, thereby increasing students' chances to succeed. Okay, and that ends my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening.